Hello and welcome to the Unique CPA with your host, Randy Crabtree. The goal of our show is to keep you at the forefront of the changing face of public accounting by having conversations with fascinating leaders and bringing you their stories, insights, and advice. The Unique CPA podcast is brought to you by Trimerit, the specialty tax professionals.
Today our guest is Donnyshimamoto. Donny is the founder and managing director of IntrapriseTechKnowlogies, which technologies is not spelled like you think it was spelled. Maybe I'll have Donny explain that to us, but I like the play on words with the Enterprise Technology. He also has the Center for Accounting Transformation, which we'll be talking about probably quite a bit today. He's well recognized as a leader in this industry. Accounting Today, top 100 multiple times, and CPA Practice Advisor Thought Leaders, CPA Technology Advisors 40 under 40, pretty much anything out there he's got an award or recognition from because he's a great guy and he honestly wants to help this profession. So Donny, welcome to the Unique CPA.
Thanks, Randy. I'm honored to be here. I've seen your list of previous people and I was like, wow, some people. So
that is, I honestly to say, how do I know these people? I don't understand how this got to this point where I can call up pretty much anybody in this industry and they'll take my call. And if I want to be on the podcast, it boggles my mind. And you are on that list. So I appreciate you being here and saying that. So today, there's a few things we can go into. There's a few things we really want to start talking about, but let's go with your Center for Accounting Transformation. You have a tagline there or a mission statement. I don't know if that's technically what it is, but you're looking to help transform the accounting profession, the business world, making the world better, making the profession better with leading edge tools and technologies. It's basically you have this mission to make the world better. And there's a few things within there I think we're going to want to talk about that today. But why don't you give us a little background on that, the Center for Accounting Transformation, how this started or how your whole mission started and what your goal is?
Sure. So yeah, and you hit on it. Our goal is to improve the world. So that's why our URL is improvetheworld.net.
Yeah.
And it's a .net because we look at it as the network. And so we're creating the network of accountants and people that work and support with accountants. So one of the things we're trying to do is be very inclusive. If you look at a lot of like the state societies and associations, they kind of create this, well, if you're not a CPA, you can't play in the game. We believe that it's the CPAs and everyone that works with the CPAs and the vendors that provide the technology and the consultants that, do everything. It takes all of us to really move everything forward. And that's really what we're trying to do is move everything forward. Part of our mission is not necessarily to convince people to change, but it's to help accelerate change and transformation for those that want to go through it. So we're really trying to be a resource, or maybe like a hub is a good way to think of it, for people that want to go through this transformation of the profession, which, that also often gets a lot of question. So I often describe it as it's a partly technology, which a lot of people know me originally as kind of a tech guy.
Yep.
But it's a lot of changes in business processes. Like you being in tax, we've been doing a bunch of stuff around tax workflow and client portals and things like that. But then it's also changes in business practices. So adoption of value billing, creating relationships and networks, like you being a specialist, I'm a specialist in the technology and innovation area. So having especially smaller firms know who should they go to, who's really valid. Don't just pick up Joe or Jane Schmo off of the side of the street and be like, you're a tech person, let me work with you. And it's like, we don't know, do we really want to trust our clients with just anybody, right? So
Right.
Finding other experts like ourselves that have different disciplines is kind of a part of what we're trying to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I kind of feel like I have a similar mission just from the standpoint that, I'm trying to educate the profession through this podcast in other ways. And you're helping with that, which I think is awesome. So with some of the things, and we can concentrate on a few that you're doing, but I think there was maybe two or three that we should probably go into today. And one of them is this whole ESG. Can you explain what that is and then what you're doing with that as the center?
Sure. So ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance reporting. And it's really come to the fore in terms of public companies right now, which often will make people think, well, that's for big companies, and why do I need to pay attention to that? But when you look at what ESG is actually measuring, or it's looking at a lot of what in accounting we would think of as the intangibles around a business. And when you look at not just the valuation on Wall Street, but even typical valuation like business valuation. So when it affects small businesses, the different areas within ESG actually play into the actual value of a business.
Hmm.
To give some examples, there's been a consolidation in the reporting frameworks under the SASB, so the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board. So it's getting to the point where, just like we have financial reporting standards, there's going to be this ESG reporting standards, and there's 5 major categories. So the environment, which is what most people think of when they hear sustainability, but it's also leadership and governance, business model and innovation, social capital, and then human capital or talent, which everyone's talking about the war for talent right now.
Oh yeah. So I'm not real familiar. So I appreciate the education, but I am not familiar. But I've talked to someone else on the podcast about being a B corporation. Is there any synergies between those, or are they competing or working together? Do you know it all?
So the corporation, the B Corp or benefit corp, it's sort of, I think of that as it ties into the governance side, because with the B Corp, the way you make decisions is supposed to be more for the overall benefit of the public rather than just the benefit of the shareholder, right? Because that's kind of the whole thing about the corporation is it exists for the benefit of the shareholder.
Right. All right. And so the B Corp is so look at you. I just threw a question out of the blue at you, and you were able to tell us what a B Corp is, because I couldn't even tell you I just know that it's out there. And I don't know if you're familiar with John Sensiba from Sensiba San Filippo, a CPA firm out of California, but they became a B Corp years ago. And now they have just a group in place to help advise companies on how to become a B Corp. So when you're out talking ESG, is this advice you're giving to companies on how to be within this ESG, how to be sustainable, how to have this governance, how to, be good for the environment, everything? Are you advising on this, or how are you guys tying in with ESG?
I would say right now we're trying to educate.
Okay.
And that's the biggest piece is because people are seeing it, and again, they're kind of thinking, oh, that's a public company thing, because you see the SEC starting to require sustainability reporting as part of it. But when you look at the different areas that is involved, if you actually use the sustainability areas as a way of, for example, analyzing decisions,
Yep.
and trying to come up with different a more balanced decision, maybe, which for some people might bring up better balanced scorecard, or because that was the kind of, what was that, late 90s that kind of came out. And then there was like conscious capitalism, and I feel like there was one other movement that kind of was looking at this like it's not just about profit, right?
Right.
So all of these things kind of had their own way of looking at it. And some people are saying like, oh, well, ESG is kind of just the next thing, where is just another one of these management frameworks. And the biggest difference for my answer to that is no, because the intention on this is not necessarily just the management decision-making analysis. There's actually reporting that's tied into it, and the standards for reporting, like I said, are tied to the SASB. So
this has gotten farther than these other movements in the past. If you wanted to say it's a movement, it's actually official reporting requirements now.
Yeah.
All right, so this is great. Well, how's this relevant, to CPA firms and the companies you work with? How do you equate the ESG to what you need to deal with them?
So there's 2 really major areas, especially as we look at our accounting industry now. And one of those is cybersecurity, which actually falls under the social capital area of ESG. So there's two aspects under social capital. One is customer privacy. And that, there's been a lot of talk about that, especially we didn't hear it as much this year, but the last 2 years
Oh, yeah.
with everything that was going on, right? The Cambridge Analytica scandal and all that. And there's still a lot of criticism around all social media and what are they actually doing and right stealing our data and selling it to other people. So there's that privacy aspect. And then tied into that then is also data security. So that would be kind of one thing that I think firms really need to, especially as we go into busy season,
Right.
like firms need to protect taxpayer information. That's a big one. And then the other one is DE&I, or diversity, equity, inclusion, which is tying back into this whole war for talent that's going on. And that's under the human capital area in ESG reporting.
Well, let's expand on those. Let's expand on cybersecurity first, because we are going into the tax season now, and it's extremely important. As tax professionals, we're dealing with a lot of very, Social Security numbers and bank accounts and all this, whatever. And there's a lot of information that we need to protect. And sending an email with someone's W-2 on it is probably not the best thing to do. When we're talking cybersecurity going into this next tax season right now, what are things firms should be doing to make sure they're protecting themselves, their clients, and obviously their reputation?
So there's a lot out there on that, right? But the core thing that we're finding that tax, especially smaller tax practitioners, are missing is having an actual information security policy and the associated, having their cybersecurity technology mapped into that. So that's a gap that we actually just released some guidance and some. We negotiated with some vendors to actually do some bulk purchasing because a lot of these vendors for the cybersecurity, they want like a minimum of 25 people, and so their pricing is a minimum of 25. But we, under the Center for Accounting Transformation, went and said, you know what, we have a bunch of smaller firms that we work with. Can we do some type of group purchase? And so that's what we've arranged. But the big thing that people are missing, and I don't know if everyone noticed when they were like renewing their PTINs and stuff, you actually had to check a box that said, I have a written information security plan, and I'm actually enforcing that with all of my staff, or even as a sole to say I'm doing it for myself.
Right.
And that's a piece that we've been talking to people, and they're like, oh no, I didn't pay attention to that. Is there a template? And they've been asking for years and years, because I've been talking about cybersecurity probably at least 10 years now. They're like, is there a template? And I'm like, yeah, there's a template. It's from NIST. It's designed for really big companies. Hopefully eventually there's going to be one for smaller. And that just never came out. So the other thing we worked on this summer was a template. One template for sole proprietors for an information security plan, and another template for kind of what we call small office or home office, SOHO.
Yep.
It's the word we use. We've created some template plans, and we've actually mapped it to these technologies where we've negotiated these bulk purchases so that firms can actually be in compliance with the IRS. It's publication 4557, as well as have that kind of that sense of peace of mind that
Right.
we really are protecting. We're not just kind of saying we actually are protecting our clients' data.
So this templates then, is this available to anybody? Is this available to people that are coming into this group purchase you did? How's these templates work?
Yep, that's pretty much it. So usually what we are doing with this is we're talking with people, kind of understanding what they already have in place, and then figuring out, do they really just need the template? Of course we're selling it, but it's nowhere near. Normally, if you were to hire an independent consultant to just write a template from you, and they're normally going to take one of these like NIST ones that's really heavy and designed for bigger, you're paying like 10, 15,000 to get a policy written. Instead, we're kind of reverse engineering it. We're like, here's the technologies that make sense for small firms, and we've written the template to kind of match that. So we've gotten the price down to like a couple thousand instead.
All right. Because I'm guessing there's a lot of people listening that think this is something I probably should do and haven't done. And so that's why I asked that, because again, this episode I'm almost certain is going to come out right before tax season gets into full swing here. So I honestly, I want to, at the end, we'll make sure that people know how to reach out to you, because this will be one peace of mind thing that they can get off their plate so they can concentrate on tax preparation and not be worried about these other things. So we'll talk about that at the end then. So I appreciate you bringing that up. All right, so we're going to try to give people peace of mind going into tax season with these types of things. Is there other things cybersecurity-wise that have happened recently that we should be aware of that maybe we're not, and we should have some other policies or something in place?
Yes, definitely. The other thing that's driving the need for the policy, and this is partially why we decided, hey, we're not going to wait anymore for someone to come out with something. We're going to create something. Is the FTC updated the safeguards rule, which this originally came out with Dodd-Frank's, and it's, when you look at it, a lot of it will say it's applying to financial institutions, which makes it sound like it's bank and credit unions.
Right.
But there's two things that pull accounting firms into this definition of financial institutions. And one of those is the handling of wires. So like if you're providing outsourced accounting to a client and you're doing wires for them, then you get pulled into this one. But the big one for tax is if you're preparing a tax return. Like
Okay.
It literally says preparing a tax return. So there's no question of whether or not any tax preparers are covered under this rule. And the change that came out, so the change was actually published in December of 2001. And previously, people may know of it as the red flags rule, because that was kind of the term that was used when it first came out. It was a lot of like recommendations. The big change that came with this update last year was they switched from what was recommended to now there's like 8 or 9 things that are required. And this is one of those where they didn't do a really good job of thinking of the fact that this was going to apply to small accounting firms.
Yeah.
So there's some requirements there around some reporting so if you're outsourcing your IT things, they need to provide reports to, like, it in the rule it's written as the board or equivalent, which means then if there's multiple partners, it should be the partner group or the sole proprietor. And you actually need to identify what they call a qualified individual, meaning someone that understands this stuff and can determine whether or not all the protections are in place and incidences are being handled correctly. So it was really kind of like, whoa, they are, asking a lot
Right.
of a tax practitioner. So again, that's kind of why we jumped in and said, you know what, we better create so we created the policy. We're in the process right now of actually writing up procedures that a partner or a practitioner could follow on their own, and creating the templates for them to document how they've complied with these policies so that they don't get assessed fine and penalties if they were to have a data breach.
So it's all based on a data breach. I mean, there's all these rules out there then, and I have to comply with it. And so what you have in place then, it's a CYA. One, I'm going to do these things, but it's also now I can prove that I've done these things. So I'm covering myself to make sure, because that seems like if I'm sitting here doing 40 tax returns a year and there's these things out there, I got one thing you just made me realize, I got to stop doing my family's tax returns. I don't have anything in place that I probably need to for this type of stuff. And but that's what we're talking about, is there's rules in place, and you're going to help people make sure that they're following those rules in the step-by-step process to make sure that things are in place that are required to be in place.
Yep. And luckily, the FTC pushed back. So originally it was going into effect on December 9th, which, we're well past. And I'm pretty sure no one's doing any of this stuff. But that was, again, why we were like, we better create something, because there's going to be a lot of people not in compliance with this. So it's been pushed back to June. So after tax season, I've given a little bit of time. And, the reaction we normally hear to that is like, well, then I don't need to worry about it until after tax season. But actually, the biggest exposure point is during tax season, because you're so busy trying to get through stuff. You're not checking your links. You're not doing all this stuff. So we're telling everyone, even if you don't fully roll out the policy, at least get the technology side in place before tax season, because it's just that one additional layer, because you don't want to deal with the data breach during tax season. And the last 2 years, we've seen the most data breaches ever. And it's because of everyone working from home and all the phishing scandals, and like the bad actors are just out there right now fishing for stuff.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think that's good advice. So I'm glad that we've got this out there. I think let's go to the one last thing then, and wrap it up. But the third thing that we talked about, or the second thing I guess under the ESG, was the D&I and how that ties into it. So you want to expand on that some?
Sure. That I think it ties into the people aspect of what we're trying to do. And it seems like everybody's trying to find staff. And so a big portion of retaining staff is that they feel like they're part of a firm. So that's kind of the inclusion, right? DE&I, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I also like to tie in the concept of belonging. So I often will with diversity, equity, inclusion, and
I
belonging,
like
because
it.
it's the inclusion and belonging when a staff member feels like they're a part of the firm, they're a part of the team, I belong here. That's when they're not thinking like, well, is there something better on the other side? Is there, could I get more money somewhere else? Like with all this recession and everything
Oh
kind
yeah,
of looming, that's that feeling of belonging can keep people at a firm rather than having them change. And there seems to be a lot of people, like especially larger firms, going after staff in previously remote areas because now they're allowing them to work remote.
right. Yeah, I've heard that quite a bit. I can get New York wages while living in wherever,
Hmm.
a
Hmm.
small rural community somewhere. Yeah, there's no geographical limitations to hiring employees for the most part. It seems, at least in our profession. So they're working on that. So educated on that. Then, are you doing this through webinars and podcasts, or are you out consulting on it, or all the above?
That literally almost all of the above. So our focus right now again is on the education piece,
Yep.
and what we're doing is we're identifying the consultants that are actually working in this area. And this is another one, kind of like we were talking on the ESG, where people go, well, that's big companies, because
Right.
I'm my little 2-3 person firm. Can I really have diversity? And the answer on that might not be yes, but can you embrace practices that create inclusion and belonging? The answer to that is definitely yes.
Yes. All right. Well, that's awesome. All right. So I love the aspects that we talked about. Last thing I want to talk about, because you and I have been talking about this a little, and I think we're going to look to do something together on this, is the personal resilience, the mental health, that aspect of the world, but our industry as well. How you working with that?
Yeah, right. Well, that's one I'm glad to have you to partner with on this, and we've lined up a couple of others in there. Actually, as I kind of think about what we were just talking about, a lot of this is like watch out for these things in busy season. So watch out for cyber, watch out for staff turnover,
Yep.
and then the last one though, if people are staying, is watch out for that burnout.
Oh yeah.
Right? Watch out that you're not overloading people or you yourself. And I think that's the really powerful message, because with the staff turnover, the partners, right, whoever and the firm owner ends up taking on the brunt of some of the coverage. And I know you've had some health issues in the past.
Yep.
I actually have just gone through, I had like shingles, and I just had COVID. And part of that, I think, was because I wasn't taking care of myself physically. So
Yep.
my immunity was down. So this is a very real risk, I think, to firm owners themselves. So we're trying to actually pull together, again, kind of directory of resources and education around what are people's options. So you've got someone, I think, that I can't remember her name, that had
Courtney Durandi she's done a presentation like back to back with me, and she talks about basically how to best utilize your time. Full focus system is what she uses. And so, yeah, those are the types of resources you're looking to accumulate to help people, right?
yeah, so we've got Courtney lined up for that, and a couple of others that have those types of systems. We've been talking to a bunch of coaches, like executive coaches type,
Yep.
that help people just really think through and prioritize and really look kind of like, how do I actually rebalance my life in this sense?
Awesome.
And then the last thing that we got, which is actually the thing that I'm most excited to see come out, is I've been working with a psychologist, a licensed psychologist, and helping him to understand. I had him talk to a bunch of CPAs that have gone through kind of burnout, and some of them that have stayed and some of them that have decided, hey, I'm not going to do accounting anymore. And so he started to create a counseling model for, I'm going to put air quotes around accountants in crisis,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
where
Oh
if you
yeah.
really are at that point and you're having like, you feel like you're having like, I don't want to say mental breakdown. Hopefully no one's at that point, but you're really burning out and you feel it, that there's an actual counselor that you can talk to that understands what our industry is like and what we're dealing with.
Yeah, we have a personality that tends to, as accountants in general, a personality that tends to think we need to help everybody, and by doing that, we always think we can outwork our to-do list, and if we just work harder and we work longer, and then we forget about the fact that that just is going to take a toll on us, both physically and mentally. That I love that idea that accountant and crisis counselor are out there available. Unfortunately, it's a big deal. I've been doing this mental health presentation, and every time I do it, I have multiple people come up to me afterwards, basically talking about the burnout. But as you said, hopefully nobody's at that mental crisis stage. I've had plenty of people come up to me that are at that or in that stage already. And so anything I can do to help that not happen, and you have the same mindset, I think that is awesome.
And I think it's like you just said, I think it's important that we talk about it.
Yep.
That's one of the biggest things. It's almost like the whole the badge of honor with the billable hour, and it's like, no, like we need to take care. We can't take care of our clients or our family or our friends or anybody if we don't take care of ourselves.
Yep. No, that's completely it. And I agree with you on that's one of the things I do in my presentation is like, stop selling hours, you know,
Hmm.
find a better way to bill and a better way to build a relationship with your clients. And I know that's something that you talk about as well.
Yeah. Well, and we've actually got Michelle Golden, or I should say River. I just
Yeah.
call her by her former name. We've got Michelle River involved with our center too. So she has a course there on doing the she calls it advanced billing rather than value billing. But
Right.
that's why it's this mix of what we're trying to do of different technologies, different business practices, all to drive and improve the profession as a whole.
Yeah, well, I love what you're doing with the center. I love the fact that you're trying to make this a better profession. I think that's awesome because I'm a little concerned with the lack of people going in and the lack of people staying in, and other things happening and just that we could be a little bit in a crisis mode before long if we're not already. So anything that you're doing that people can reach out to, I think that's great. Any last thoughts on what we talked about or anything I missed you want to add in?
I would just summarize again, these are all things that you need to think about as you're going into busy season. So secure down those systems, get the technology and policies in place to kind of CYA, like you said, because this is the risk period.
Yep.
Think about your people and let's prevent all that burnout this busy season.
I agree with that completely. All right. So one last question that everybody has to answer before they leave the show is, we talked about all the stuff that you're doing, which is awesome stuff. And hopefully you're taking care of yourself more than you said you just mentioned you may not have been taking the best care of yourself. How about outside of work passions? What do you do that you enjoy when you're not trying to make the world better?
For me, I'm a foodie.
Yeah.
So that's where, especially now being in Vegas, so many great food and so many opportunities. I was sad I missed you at QuickBooks Connect,
Yeah. I was hoping to see you.
but everyone comes through, and so that's my thing. Come and I'll take you to some off strip
Yeah.
interesting different restaurants that we can check out.
So I have an opportunity to go to Vegas in January, and that's about the time this show is going to come out. As of now, I haven't committed, but now you're starting to make me think I got to go in for one night. There's a conference there that I usually go to that I was going to skip this year and just send a couple other people to, but I'll let you know if I'm coming, because I'll definitely take you up on that foodie aspect of things. Although I need to slow down on my food a little bit, I think. All right. So this is honestly, you have so much great information, and I'm hoping people are going to want to find out more. If they do, how do people get a hold of you? Go to the website, the email address. What's the best place to look up more on Donny in the companies?
The easiest one to find me is always LinkedIn. And I also push a lot of articles and information out, not just stuff that I'm writing, but stuff that I find. I pushed your podcast out several times. Come and listen to this. So I always tell people connect with me on LinkedIn. It's Donny Shimamoto. Or my email is donny@intraprise.us.
Intra with an A. Intra. Yeah. Got it. Price. All right. And they can find. You can Google search and you'll find Donny. Believe me, I did that this morning. He pops up all over the place. So, all right. Again, I appreciate this. I was really, you and I think, rescheduled once or twice. Probably my fault. I'm glad we got it in today. I had a great conversation. I enjoyed it a lot. So thank you, Donny.
Enjoyed it as well. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today on the Unique CPA. You can find all the links and show notes for today's episode, as well as more about TriMerit, at theuniquecpa.com. Remember to subscribe and join us for our next episode, where we'll be going beyond compliance into forging new pathways of delivering value to your clients, diversifying your revenue streams, and leading-edge management techniques and styles.